Hi, we are live. Happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. How are you all doing? I've got Instagram live as well. We're going to try this double thing going and see how that works. Instagram, I will focus to Facebook, but feel free to throw your comments here as well. I want to know from everyone. Tell me how your holiday was. Who celebrated the holiday? Who didn't celebrate the holiday and did something completely different over the weekend? Who shopped over the weekend? Anyone find anything great? Also, my chair is like rolling today. I've been like rolling down the hill, it feels like. I want to hear how everyone's holiday was, and then we will dive into today's conversation. I've got a lot I want to talk about. I want to talk about 5 shifts my clients make to double their income or more. Before we dive into our conversation, we always have a giveaway to thank you for being here, to thank you for joining me. I'm always so grateful to have you in this group, in the honor of Thanksgiving, but also in the honor of my birthday, which is tomorrow. We are going to give away another coaching session, a 100K CEO mindset and strategy coaching session. I've been fully booked for years, so we don't always have availability to give sessions away, but this time of year I like to give a couple more and get to connect with some of you and support you with making your first 6 figures, multi-6 figures, 7 figures in your business, and getting clear on the mindset and strategy that helps you to do that. All you have to do to be entered to win is leave a comment below. Now we're on the replay. Instagram, you can do the same thing. I will say the comments don't save the same way, so I will try to remember and let my team know. Or when this goes up as the replay, you can leave another comment there or hop into my Facebook group if you want an extra entry. And I just realized Facebook, we need to do something to this screen if I can. Hold on. Facebook. Is that better? Yeah, that's better. I had judge on my camera. If you leave a comment, an emoji, anything like that will get you entered to win. If you don't want to win the session and you win the session, you can pass it along to someone else. If you're working with a coach or something like that, we were very, very big on respecting that. So no pressure. Feel free to comment anyway, even if the session isn't something you want. But we definitely are going to be giving that to someone, and can't wait to connect with someone for that. Tinley, hi. She says, hi. Had hot pot and bought a bunch of programs I've been dying to get for a while. Black Friday specials. Big hug for your birthday, Wahoo. I love you. Thank you for the birthday wishes. And hot pot, it sounds so good. And so glad you got to enjoy the holiday. All right, let us dive into our conversation today. So I wanted to bring this conversation for a couple of reasons. One, I've been sharing over the year that last year 11 of my clients went from zero, or not exactly zero, maybe some of them were at $500 a month, but essentially went from the beginning of their business to making their first 6 figures. I had many clients who grew to multi-6 figures and $1 million, but that was a fun thing to see how many clients made that growth last year. And this year I've watched how many of those clients have taken that 6 figures, that first 6 figures in business, and doubled it or more. And one of the gifts and blessings I have is because so many of my clients do work with me long term, and that's something that I really value. I get the benefit of seeing behind the scenes of not only so many businesses, but seeing how businesses grow over time and seeing what takes someone to their first 6 figures, what takes someone from 6 figures to multi-6 figures, what takes someone from multi-6 figures to 7 figures. So I thought it would be a great conversation to have to talk a little bit about what are some of those shifts that I see behind the scenes taking my clients from that 6 to multi-6 figures to helping them double their income or more. I've seen many of my clients take that 6 figures and double it to make them a multi-6 figure, but some of them have over doubled, some of them have tripled, some of them have 8 times it and are at 800K plus for the year. And then obviously we have clients at different places. Not everyone started at that place in their business. So I wanted to dive into that a little bit today. And hey, Brandy, nice to see you. And share some of that with you. And obviously this is all to benefit and serve all of you. So if you have questions, reflections, throw them at me. One of the things that I thought would be helpful just to share, because I think so often we hear multiple messages in the online space, and we hear both this idea of what got you here won't get you to where you want to go next. I know this is something I say all the time, but then we also hear so much. I know I talk a lot about, and we'll do a live stream on this more later this month, but I know I put a post in the Facebook group earlier, was it last week, where we shared at the beginning of November how my business crossed over the $1 million revenue mark in the last 4 years. And one of the things I was sharing, and I shared this on Instagram and stories as well, is how so much of what has gotten me here In the last 2 years, we've made over $700,000, right? What's gotten me here has been a lot of doing the same and rinsing and repeating and allowing for the compound effect. So we kind of hear these like different messages, right? Where it's like on the one side, it's like, what got you here won't get you to where you want to go next. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, wait a second. You're also saying what did get you here is doing kind of more of the same. Like, which one is it? So I want to kind of demystify as much as I can. Obviously, we can't talk about everything in a live stream, but just break some of that down with you and then just share some of those specifics. So, as an overall as a generalization, obviously everyone's business is different, but what I see for most of my clients at every stage of business and what I've experienced myself is that big picture. If we look at what is bringing you to 6 figures, what is bringing you to multi 6 figures, what is bringing you to 7 figures, what is bringing you to 10K months, to 20K months, right? What are those shifts that have you do those leaps? In many ways, a lot of the practical foundation of business does not change, and the longer you're in business and the more your income is growing, well, yes, some offers and things might change, but a lot of what my clients who are further along in business, just in that they've been in business longer and they're maybe making that higher level income in business, a lot of what we're doing is working the same business basics, working the same foundation. We're looking at how do we refine those basics and make them better. Essentially, that's a lot of what I do in my business. I think this whole past year for me, which we'll share more about in another live again, but so much of this for me has been revisiting foundational things and just tightening those up. So I think there is a lot of what got you here will get you to where you want to go next, and to normalize that. And I think there are also some shifts that happen at every stage of business, at every income level. They're not always big shifts, but I think there are some things, especially when you're looking at going from that first 6 figures to that next 6 figures, or from going from making 10K months to the higher 10K or multi 5-figure months, and kind of going into those higher multi 5-figure months. I do think there are some shifts that happen in business to sustain that. If you're doing that in a way that doesn't blow out your system or doesn't have you feel like you're working around the clock. And so those are some things we're going to dive into today. And let me know again, questions, reflections, and all of those things. I've got a lot of background noise today from New York and Instagram as well. I want to make sure I'm not ignoring you, so feel free you can throw questions at me as well, even though I'm chatting with Facebook. So let us dive into a couple of these things. So we're gonna chat some kind of strategy pieces, some clarity pieces, some mindset pieces. I will share with you what is also my biggest edge that I'm always working, and I will share with you as well the places. I know there's a couple of things that I share with my clients where they kind of hate me in the moment for it, but they love me long term. And I say that again just to normalize some of these things, because I think sometimes we hear about shifts and it's like, oh, that's not the thing. What I really wanted was to buy another program that was going to give me the secret to tell me the thing to make $1 million overnight. Okay, so what is one of the biggest shifts and one of the biggest things I play with clients who, let's say they're kind of making that first 10K and they're really wanting to shift into 20K plus months, or let's say they're making 10 to 20K months, but they feel like they're hitting an income ceiling, and what we do to shift. And this is both what I see clients who've been with me long term that we're starting to shift, or I often have clients who come to me who are at this stage of business and this is kind of the place they're sitting at. And this is, I think, one of the most challenging, hey Andrew, nice to see you. One of the most challenging, I think, things that I coach my clients around that they hate me in the moment for, but again, love me long term around, and that is really looking at capacity and noticing how and where they are filling capacity to the brim, and not creating or allowing space for more income offers, revenue, things to come in. So there's a couple different nuances under this, but overall as a general concept, and I think this can be really challenging for people to understand, especially when this is a little bit of what got you here won't get you to where you want to go next, especially when you're, generally speaking, bringing yourself to that first 10K, 20K month mark per month. A lot of what is creating that is sort of like, how can I get fully booked, right? How can I fill to the brim? How can I fill as many spots as possible? It is a lot of like, how can I exert and watch how my exertion equals money? How can I fill a client spot, fill a place on my roster, and watch that equal income, right? I think this is something that probably makes logical sense for everyone. Tilly says, "Aha, yup, hate you in the best way possible when you call us out." I love you. I love you for saying that. Tilly, thank you for sharing that. She is a good example of that. Right, so I mean, how that makes logical sense, right? I think our brain thinks, and I think this is how a lot of people bring their business to six figures or that 10K, 20K month, which is sell spots, make money, do effort, make money. And what I have found to be true is that is absolutely what will bring you to your first six figures, what will bring you to those consistent 10K months. That is absolutely what makes money in business. And there is a ceiling, there is a cap on that. And what I have found to be true with money, energetically and also practically, is we need space. Money loves a container, right? Money loves a purpose and money loves a container, but we also need space. We also need capacity. We literally need room. And I talk to clients a lot about having physical and literal capacity, which we can talk about that in a whole nother live stream because that's almost another concept. But there is actual space needed in your business if you want to increase your revenue. And so if your business at this point is making great income, but you are filled to the brim, where is there room for more to come in? If you are filled to the brim with clients, and this is very logical, right? If let's say your client capacity, I'm trying to think of what a normal client capacity is for someone. Someone can let me know, like, how many clients is their fully booked number, whatever that is. I know for some people, I'm mindful to say numbers because then people get in their head is like, that's the right number. And that's why the only reason I don't want to share numbers, but whatever your fully booked number is, if you're fully booked and that is your capacity, right? There's no more room for income to come in unless you have the narrative of, oh, well, I just have to keep adding more and more on to this. And I think this is a trap then people create for themselves where it feels like the only way they can then increase their income is to increase their capacity, which tends to lead to burnout, which tends to lead to overworking, which tends to lead to, wait a second, I didn't want to just make more money. I also wanted to work 20 hours a week, or I wanted to have time with my kids, or I wanted to have time to travel, or I wanted to actually have a life. Just to see if there's any questions there or responses around that. So, right, I think this is like the place where our brain gets in a little bit of like, and as soon as is going on, we have resistance towards bringing in more into our business. So practically, there's no room for anything to come in subconsciously or not subconsciously, consciously, right? There is an energetic block saying, yes, practically I would like more money, but every other part of me doesn't want more money to come in because that wouldn't feel great. I don't want to work more. I don't have capacity to work more. I don't want to burn out. I want to spend time with my kids. I want to travel. I'm always quoting the Caroline Elliott quote, you don't get what you say you want, you get what you actually want. And this is a place I find a lot of clients when they first hire me are at where they say they want to make more income. Of course they do, but the way in which they know how to make more income is not what they actually want. And so they're kind of like at an impasse, right? Like there's no room for money to come in. The only way they know how to make more is to work more, right? Like that starts to feel really heavy. And as soon as that is the situation, this is what we're doing with money, right? It's sort of like, yes, I want you, but no, I actually don't, right? We basically have we have no capacity, so there's no room. It's like the friend of yours who says they really want to date, but is so busy they don't have room for a date. Like they really want to find a partner, but they don't have room to date. And you're like, well, but you kind of have to have capacity in your schedule for another human. The same is true for money in your business. Let me know if this is resonating and if this makes sense. But just love to check in and make sure that's clear. So one of the things we really shift and look at is how can we actually start to create capacity? And this can feel like such an edge, especially again, it's sort of like what got you here won't get you to where you want to go next. Sometimes this means a temporary dip in income. Sometimes, a lot of times what this means is looking at practicing saying no to opportunities or setting stronger boundaries around what you're doing in your business. Boundaries are a big part of what create capacity for you energetically, practically in your business. And then the other thing we practically look at is if we are looking at honestly what capacity is, then how can we start to bring in income in a way that doesn't have you keep adding more onto your plate? How can you do the same? I mean, this is like the whole idea of scaling, right? But how can we look at not just do more, fill more, but how can we look at, do we even have an offer that is scalable right now? Or are you painting yourself, boxing yourself into a corner, saying I should be making more, why is my income not doubling? But like there's no way for your income to double unless you burn out. Do we need to look at having something that is more scalable? Do we need to look at raising prices? Do we need to look at more innovative ways to have more income come through the door without having you work more, without having you blow out your nervous system, without having you get completely burned out? And I think these are things that are very practical and make complete sense, but that we sometimes forget about. And so often I'll have someone new come to work with me, and it's sort of like they're just so wrapped up either in this like pattern of, especially for those of us who are high achievers, I think we have such a pattern of and a story around I have to work hard to make money, right? And especially if that is the very thing that brought you to the six figures, that brought you to making those 10 to 20K months. Even if you can practically understand, right, of course I need to have a little capacity, I need to have a little space for more clients, for more income to come in. I'll use myself as an example of this in a minute. So, I mean, of course, that can practically make sense. And of course, there's this, they're seeing people online talk about like work less, make more, right? Scaling with this whole idea. But if that is your patterning, and if you have a narrative and a story that work hard equals money, and then you also have the evidence of fill your capacity all the way to the brim, work really hard, make money, and that's what's gotten you to where you are now, it would make sense that it would feel very challenging to suddenly shift and do something different to where you want to go next. And I think this is where the mindset work really comes in. It's like we can see the practical solution. We can see, oh, we actually need to have some spaciousness, whether that's literal time in your calendar or room for a client at a higher rate, whatever that is. But it's also so much of the mindset work there to create safety around not always working yourself to the bone, not deriving your self-worth from work, not creating safety around like, as I'm only worthy or I'm only safe if I hustle as hard as possible, if I'm always busy, right? There's a mindset component to this as well as a practical component. So I would say this is a huge shift that my clients make when they double their income. And I offer that because otherwise, if I say something like raising your prices, right, could be a way to double your income. But if we just say raise your prices and we don't speak to this part, if you're filled to the brim, if you're at capacity and you raise your prices, that literally does nothing for you, especially if you grandfather clients in, right? That's only going to serve you and help you double your income or more if you're also creating capacity for new clients to come in at those higher rates. This is something this is probably one of my biggest edges to work all the time. So if this comes up for you, like I see you, I am you, I feel you. I've just done enough work around this that it's easier for me and easier for me to notice in other clients. Tinley says, so true. I've had my most expansive growth moments in business right after those dips because I needed to align with my capacity and what I truly wanted. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's just so helpful for everyone to have that evidence because our brains that are wired for safety see a so-called dip, see a so-called contraction, see spaciousness as everything is going fucking wrong. And what I have seen to be true in my business, what I've seen to be true, I see the behind the scenes. My clients share their revenue with me, so I see the behind the scenes of so many businesses and of revenue. What I have seen is those so-called dips and spaciousness are simply space being created for the avalanche of more money to come in. Or if you are, let's say you're creating a scalable offer, let's say you're a business owner where you are full and what's next for you is maybe creating a group program or creating a course or creating something that's serving one to many. I was just talking to someone this morning about memberships, right? Like if that's something you're creating, you probably are going to need some spaciousness to create that, right? And to be able to market that and to allow for that to come in. And so I think we sometimes forget these things and we just see space. We just see even a temporary dip as not even normal, but just, oh my gosh, something wrong is happening, versus it's almost like we kind of have to have that for something to grow. Like that's, if I take my plant that is overgrowing in my living room right now and I move it into the bigger pot it needs to go into, there's going to be a moment where there's way more space in that pot. That's by design, right? That spaciousness there is so that that plant that was filling the other pot has room to grow and expand into this new pot. If I took that plant and put it in another pot that's exactly as tight and is containing it just as much, why did I do that? There's no more capacity for this plant to grow. I'm not giving it any space and room to get bigger. I'm just continuing to crowd it. Just seeing if there's any comments there, right? So I think this is just something, again, to remember. And what I would say with this can be capacity in terms of clients on your roster. This can be capacity or spaciousness in terms of allowing yourself to spend money. So there is money is circulating. You're like, there's a need for more money to come in. This can also be spaciousness in terms of what we were talking about earlier, setting boundaries, learning to say no. One part of this, and one of the, I'd say, so one of my clients, I think, crossed over 500 or 600K this year. And one of the biggest things we've been working around is looking at what are all the brilliant, smart ideas, what are all the money generating, awesome things that they could do that would absolutely make them a fuck ton of money, except for they wouldn't really, because these would siphon time, energy, capacity away from what's currently generating revenue. And our work has been basically around learning how to have an idea, keeping an idea generator. Don't mind my cat who's like in our, I think she's like showing you her butt. This is Nala. She says hi. She loves you all. But learning how to spot great ideas and say no to essentially most of them, because those very great ideas are crowding the pot that allows more income to come in. And so often when you're growing and then going into scaling, when you're taking yourself from 10 to 20K months and wanting to make 50K months, wanting to make $1 million a year, sometimes it's about adding on a new offer, if that's what makes sense, because that's how you can increase your capacity. Sometimes it's about learning to say fucking no to almost everything. Whereas when you started your business, it was learning to lean in and say yes to almost everything. And I think that's a really big shift that can be very confusing, again, because what got you here won't always get you where you want to go next. At the start of business, absolutely, when you're going to make your first 6 figures, when you're making your first 10K months, there is a big part of like, say yes to a lot of things, test a lot of things. And then that has to shift at a certain point. Okay, I want to make sure I get through, because I've got all five of these. But if you have questions, throw them at me. I love how Nala gets both Tinley and Sarah say kitty. This is Nala. She says hi. She's gonna beg for food for the next half an hour with us. Let me know if you have questions around that. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but I would invite anyone who's feeling like, okay, I'm making consistent income, I'm hitting a ceiling, I don't know how to like increase that income. That's something I actually want. Like the only way I know how to do this feels like working myself to the bone, working more. Probably there's an opportunity to look at capacity. Probably there's an opportunity to look at, do we have a narrative around hard work is the only way to make more money? How can we start to unwind that? Probably we have an opportunity to look at, where do we need to hold boundaries? Where do we need to say no to opportunities instead of yes to opportunities? Which all tends to, I think, look at capacity, whether that's a literal or practical capacity. Okay, so the next one here, Tinley, I'm sure you can speak to this, and just because I know what you do, but this is kind of a two-parter. One of the big shifts I see from kind of 10 to 20K months and then going and growing that, doubling that, taking that and above, is really going from running your business and trying to do everything yourself and being a like master of all the things, and like taking all the courses and learning how to like make your own website and do your own social media, and really instead learning how to focus in on your zone of genius. And I think this hits on a couple different things. So first thing, and the reason I said Tinley is because Tinley's a really great OBM. So one of the first things that comes to mind here is there is a certain point for most business owners. I have clients who have very small teams. I don't think this means you have to have a massive team and suddenly like now we need to have you running a team with a quadrillion people. But for most people, if you want to double your income past a certain amount, it usually means you're going to be bringing on some sort of support. And I think this is a huge shift. And I think when you're starting your business, honestly, it doesn't always make sense unless you are a new mom or a busy parent with, or working a corporate job with very limited time, where it makes sense to leverage your time and to spend more time from someone else. Usually my clients who are starting out, I don't encourage them to bring on team, because I think there's actually a benefit to learning how to do things yourself, creating some of those systems and processes, knowing what you're going to delegate out. It also isn't always the most, doesn't always make the most sense for your profit margin, but there hits a point where trying to do all the things and doing anything outside of your zone of genius just costs you money and keeps you stuck in business. And this is such, again, a challenging conversation for clients because, again, what got them to this stage in business usually has been wearing all the hats. It has been doing all the things. And there usually is that temporary dip, or it looks like a temporary dip in what they're taking home if they're going to bring on team support, because we're going to invest in something that you think you can do better, or that you know how to do, or that you can do in less time than this person you're paying, right? It's less money you're taking home temporarily, right? There's a lot of pieces here where I could do it better than this person. Now I've got to learn how to lead a team member. Oh, hey, Tinley, I see you. This is so fun. I see you on both places. Love you back, Tinley. And I think this is a place where it can be a little bit of a mind fuck, again, because you're like, but this is the very thing that brought me to 6 figures. This is the very thing that brought me to 10 or 20K months. And this is where what got you here won't get you to where you want to go next. It will keep you here, but oftentimes it'll also keep you here with diminishing returns, because at a certain point, and what I invite my clients to think about is, how much money are you leaving on the table? How much does it cost you to continue to do everything in your business yourself? If you're making a certain amount of income in your business, your time, everyone's time is valuable, but just in terms of what your business brings in, your time is bringing in a certain amount of revenue. If you're starting to do things in your business that either aren't your zone of genius and that someone else can do that is their zone of genius, you have to think about what you're essentially spending in your own time and energy, and where you are limiting your capacity, what we were just talking about, in terms of bringing in revenue through your zone of genius. And it can literally start to cost you lost opportunity, leaving money on the table to try to do everything on your own. The other big thing is, I really think the big shift that happens for people when they're kind of at the 10K, 20K mark and they're scaling to above that and they're doubling their income from that, is really starting to look at, what is it I do best? What do I like to do? What is my zone of genius? I think when we're starting businesses, it makes sense. We're kind of like trying a bunch of things. We're figuring that stuff out. Some people know right from the get-go, but there's such a narrowing in of that focus and really trusting that zone of genius that happens. And the clients I see really give themselves permission to own their zone of genius, to go and lean into their zone of genius fully. This kind of goes back to what we were saying with the capacity piece as well, and to start to say no to things that they could do really well, but that are in their zone of excellence, that are in their zone of competence, and either looking at, how do I delete that? How do I delegate that? How do I automate that? Or how do I just say no to that and not have that in my business? That is really what helps a business have capacity, going back to our first one there, to bring in more revenue. I can use myself as an example if that's helpful, but I'm thinking, I don't know if this is the best example, but we'll just use it as an example. When I started my business, I love to write. I'm pretty darn good at writing and content and copy, and I offer for my clients, I review their content and copy, and that's something I think is really valuable and really helpful. And when I first started my business, one of the things I offered was I would meet with someone to help write their About Me page. I had to get rid of that so quickly, because this is one of those things I saw, I can do this really well. I'm good at this. This is my zone of excellence. People will actually pay me for this. And this is not my zone of genius. And continuing to do this starts to cost my business money, because I'm not focusing all my energy into the things that are my zone of genius, that only I can do in my business, that I'm so darn good at, that I really want to monetize at a higher level, that I want to pour all my time and energy in, right? So this was almost like a saying no to offers, right? It was narrowing in on what is my zone of genius. Just like there's a ton of stuff in my business that I did at the start of my business. Scheduling my social media content, making my social media graphics. I'm just trying to think, there's my podcast show notes, right? There are things that I can do well. I know how to do these things. It's not like I can't figure this stuff out. But at a certain point, I had to look at, is this my zone of genius? And how is me doing this actually limiting my capacity, which is the first thing we're talking about, in order to scale? And these are the very things I have to give to people who are that is their zone of genius, and they are excited to do it, and they do it way better than me anyway. And that is how I've been able to take my income, right? We wouldn't have made $700K in 2 years, or more than 2 years, if I was still doing all of those things that have brought me to my first $100K a year in business. It didn't mean that was wrong that first year in business. It just means what got me here won't get me to where I want to go next. And like that's one of the things we want to play with and shift. Just seeing. Jordan says, hi Kim, love to jump in on this as long as I can. Nice to see you, Jordan. I adore you. Let me know if you have questions. So with that one there, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I know we've done live streams around Zone of Genius before, and Zone of Excellence and Zone of Competence. So I won't overly talk that here. If anyone has questions around that though, and what the difference on that is, we can always do another live stream around that as well. But I do think that is a huge piece of what I really see as a shift as you're taking yourself from 10 to 20K months to 20 to 40 to 40 to 50, right? As you're scaling there up to 100K plus months, is really looking at, again, what's my zone of genius? How can I really look at my job is to try to spend as much time as possible, focus on zone of genius tasks, which are going to be a few things. And how can I look at deleting what is in my zone of genius, automating it, delegating it, getting rid of it, saying no to it, setting a boundary around it? Because what I find happens, well, we will chat about this for a quick second. It's not the zone of competence stuff that costs you that next level in business. It's not the zone of competence stuff that keeps you from doubling your income, right? Most business owners get, okay, I'm not great at making social media graphics. That's not my zone of genius. Let me delegate support around that, right? Like I think most business owners can get their head around that. It's when we start to get into the zone of excellence tasks and the stuff that's like, you are really good at that. Like you could make money probably if you wanted to, doing those things. How can you look at those zone of excellence things you're still doing in your business and get really honest with yourself? Is that robbing you from time in your zone of genius? Is that costing you time in your business, in your zone of genius, energy in your zone of genius? Where is this having you leave money on the table? Where is this something you could delegate to someone where your zone of excellence is their zone of genius? Or maybe this is just something to say no to. For example, like me writing someone's About Me page. I don't know. I think I was pretty darn good at that. That's just not my zone of genius, and it's just not what lights me up, right? And that's the very thing. If I stayed in that, because I'm like, well, if I have that offer, and if I have my one-on-one coaching offer, and if I have this other offer here, because these are all things I'm excellent at, look at how much more money I can make. But what really happens is that just starts me kind of leaving money on the table because I'm not focusing all my energy in my zone of genius, which is the place where your business blows up. So hopefully that makes sense. Jordan says, yes, that's how bookkeeping was for me. I've mostly hired subs to handle this out for clients. It's such a great example. That's such a great example with the work you do. And you're so good at it, right? You like that is so your zone of excellence and so great. You still even get to offer that in your business. It's just something to hire out to those subs, and then you get to be in your zone of genius coaching. Like I think that's such a great example, Jordan. Tilly says, you've helped me make the shift recently because I'm so good at helping clients with social media. Excellence. But I don't desire to do that work at all and lean more into the project and systems management. Genius. Yes, Tinley, such a great example. You're so good at social media, right? That is your zone of excellence and you have a lot of fun, but all the time spent in that starts to rob you from your zone of genius. And I think just even from a marketing perspective, right, for everyone, we can see how if we're in our zone of excellence, we're also not marketing to our zone of genius, right? Because here's the other thing with zone of genius, zone of excellence. Your zone of excellence usually feels a lot safer. Your zone of excellence is usually the thing people easily pay you for. Your zone, me writing someone's About Me page, right? That's almost like less scary for me to do. I'm not as like tightly married to it. I just know I'm good at it. I know people will pay me for it. It doesn't like feel like my heart and my soul and like, so it's a lot less scary to offer. Whereas usually your zone of genius work, it is something that is like, oh, but this is mine. And like, it usually does feel like a little bit of, Gay Hendrick calls it the big leap, right? It does feel like a little bit of a leap. I think it can be a lot more uncomfortable to offer. It does feel like you're putting yourself out there in a bigger, bolder way, right? Burying your genius a little bit more. So I think that's one of these shifts I work with clients around so much, because this is why so many people stay in their zone of excellence, because it feels so much more comfortable and safer and almost like easier to make money. That's your brain lying to you, right? It is so much easier to make money from your zone of genius. It's just sometimes a little more uncomfortable. Kate says, makes so much sense. Oh, great. I'm so glad that makes sense. I I will say this is something I check myself on all the time as well. Many of you, anyone who's known me for a while knows I've been in business for 6.5 years. I've tested so many different things in my business, so many different models, so many different iterations, because I always want to give myself permission to test something. But there's been so many things I've tested that are my zone of excellence, or have been my, like, something that I know if I focus a little bit more on could be my zone of excellence, right? Like they're sort of that borderline there, but they're not my zone of genius. And I know, yes, I could monetize this, but at what expense to my genius? At what expense to the rest of my business? And also at what expense to my joy if it's something that doesn't feel completely in alignment? So what I would say is when you're looking at going from 10 to 20K months, 20K months and above, whatever that is, 80K months, 100K months, right? Like every stage above that, so often I think our brains think it's about adding on more. And both what we're looking at with the capacity and with this shifting from like into your zone of genius, and like how can we just keep looking at how do we delete zone of excellence? What we can see here is so much of this is about doing less better, right? It is that boundaries piece, and boundaries not in the way of like holding boundaries with other people, but even holding a boundary within yourself as to what are the few things we're focusing on, what are the few things we're going to lean into, what are the few things we're going to do better, how can we focus into deeper, not wider, versus what more can I do, which is I think the very trap and kind of how we get stuck of zone of excellence, or how I have many people come to me, they're doing so great in business, we're like, why am I hitting an income ceiling? And this is so often what we're unwinding. And just checking the comments. Kate says my zone of excellence equals teaching, zone of genius equals coaching. Kate, that's another just really, really great example of that. You are a brilliant teacher, right? And you're so good at it. And that is the very thing that probably keeps you from your genius. And your genius is just a whole different, like coaching is like, that is like, it is just what you were put on this earth to do. So I think just so helpful for everyone to see these examples and just to keep checking in with. And again, there's nothing wrong with being in your zone of excellence for everyone here. And I think so often our zone of excellence is also what we have to like test a couple things to know, right? Some clarity comes through action so often. Genius comes through action as well. Like we don't always know these things until we do a bunch of things. But I think this can just be for everyone listening, just a place to check in with where it's like, oh, is possibly the reason things are feeling more challenging, or is possibly the reason my income isn't growing the way I want to because I'm stuck in what I do really, really well, but that isn't my genius there. And hey, nice to see you, Amber. I've got Instagram as well, so this is fun getting to toggle back and forth. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep doing that, y'all. I haven't decided. So everyone, let me know how they're liking that. I'll decide over the next couple weeks. Okay. So how are we doing our time? Okay, I'm going to try to. We've got 3 more. I can talk about these pretty quickly, but I want to make sure I get all five in, and not keep you all for like 800 years here. So the next shift here that I really see allows my clients to double their income or more, and I'm going to explain this a little bit more, but it's understanding and knowing what creates results for them, putting a system and a process around this, and then refining their basics and essentially doing basics better. So I'm going to explain this a little bit more, but what I find, and I find this especially for clients who come to me who are maybe already making 6 figures, or already making 10K a month, who want to scale, I find what happens so often kind of at this stage is it's sort of like you are making money, you are doing things right, but it can almost feel like, but how did that happen? Like, I'm not exactly sure how that happened, or I know how that happened, but like, I don't exactly know what I'm supposed to show up for every day, or like, wait, what do I do on Tuesday in my business? What do I do on Friday in my business? Like, what exactly keeps this business running? And so a really big, and that's not wrong or bad. I think that's a very normal, very, very normal thing. But a lot of what I'm working with clients who are at, like, whether they're coming to me at that stage or they've been with me, I think if clients have been with me from day one and we're kind of growing to 6 figures and going above, sometimes they have this in place already. But it's taking the mystery out of where the money in their business is coming from, and identifying very clearly what is their process, what are their non-negotiables, meaning, I use the term non-negotiables, but just mean like, what are these things that are just non-negotiable? Like, these are just kind of like, it's non-negotiable for me to brush my teeth. Like, I took the booster shot and I was like sick as a dog. I get sick from every booster shot. Does everyone? The COVID booster shot. Every single COVID shot I've taken made me super sick, right? But no matter how sick I am, like, I'd have to be really, really sick for me not to brush my teeth. Like that is just a non-negotiable for me. So we look at their business, like what are those same non-negotiables that we know, like this is my non-negotiable. This is the process that works for me. It is not a mystery where the results and the money in my business comes from. And I just know what I show up for in my business. And we're putting a system and a process around that. So on any given Monday, on any given Tuesday, on any given Friday, I know what I'm showing up for. And I know that this brings in money in my business. And this sounds, I feel like this is one of those things where it's like, I was joking with my, I'm in a peer mastermind, and I was joking about being basic bitches, and like, it's about doing the basic bitch shit in business that so often is skipped over in the hustle to kind of figure business out, in the hustle to make that original, like that initial 6 figures. It's kind of like getting back to basics and getting really clear on what this is and starting to bring in the basic bitch boring shit for business, because I know I'm probably gonna get hate for this. Like no one wants to hear this. Everyone wants to hear how like business is always like a unicorn ride and you're always on like a cloud 10 and it's just like, I don't know, like you're shitting glitter every day. And I love my business. I love my work. I love my clients so dearly. Like I pinch myself daily. Like I like sincerely love my business. And if you're a client of mine, you know I cry on like all of our calls. And there is just some really boring basic stuff I do in my business that allows all of that to be true. And I want it to be basic and boring, right? Like that is where the foundation and the stability in my business is. That's what allows the rest to feel so good. If that didn't feel solid, right, it would always be like such a rock and roll roller coaster. And I think unfortunately, as humans, we're addicted to drama, but I think so much of our online space, unintentionally or intentionally, who knows, right, is almost selling and manufacturing drama as like the right way to feel in business. But what I've just seen to be true in business, in relationships, right, like this is the same thing for my marriage. I want that predictability, that stability, that kind of boring, predictable way, that basic bitch shit that I know if I show up for, this reliably brings in income in my business so that I can get the fulfillment from the other pieces. And so this is a really big shift I see at this stage of business. And it's kind of breaking up with that addiction really to the like the highs and the lows and the like excitement of like not knowing where your client's coming from, as opposed to like, how do we just bake these things in, which like that's just a little less exciting in the best way possible. Jordan says, totally have loved leaning into what sales actions I need every week. And those are non-negotiable. Also helps me remember it's a long-term game. So well said. So well said. It's exactly that. It's starting to see it as a long term and not making that a bad thing, right? Like just seeing it as like that is normal and that is what doubles someone's income. Well, the example I was using at the beginning of this live stream, if I look at the clients who made their first 6 figures last year and have made multiple 6 or 800K, whatever that is, but let's just say they're making multiple 6 and doubled it this year. That was over the course of 2 years with the things we're talking about here. So I would say I think this is a great thing to have in place from day one, but also don't make yourself wrong. I think a lot of businesses at 6 figures, it's almost like you haven't had enough data to even necessarily know what some of those non-negotiables and rinse and repeat things would be that are working for you, right? And sometimes that can also happen really, like I've had clients who've gotten fully booked in like a couple of weeks. I had one client who they hit 6 figures in 6 months. It was like 20K months within 6 months, fully booked so fast, right? We almost don't have a chance then when that's happening to take a step back and look at, well, what worked here? What are the basics? Like, what do I need a system and a process around? So just to normalize that for anyone, because I think there's almost shame. I've had clients come to me who are kind of at that 6 figure, like at that 10K mark, wanting to grow. And like, there's almost, I think, this shame that's like, they're supposed to have this all figured out or should know this. And I think, especially if you've grown quickly, but really no matter what, I think that's just a normal part of the evolution. And it's great if you know that already and have that in place, but definitely don't make yourself wrong if you don't, right? That these are just normal things. And oftentimes this is also when you have a moment to catch your breath to start to look at, okay, what is the data telling me? What is working? What do I want to put a process around? What can I rinse and repeat here? What can I make a little bit more boring? And then with this, what I would say is then this is kind of where what we're talking about is what got you here won't get you to where you want to go next, but also what got you here is also what will get you to where you want to go next. This is where with a lot of clients, we're then looking at, instead of, okay, what new crazy things can we add on? We're looking at just how can we do basic better? right? How can we refine this? If your messaging is working, how can we tighten it up that much more? If your sales process is working, are there opportunities for us to lean in, right? And improve it by 1 to 2 degrees, right? Like how can we just now look at what's working and refine it or improve it, or just not mess with it and let it work? But that's what I mean by doing basic better, as opposed to, I think sometimes we think, well, if this got me here, if I want to now make a 50K month, I need to like figure out a whole new crazy strategy. That's where it's like this, we want to come back to just like, how are we deepening into this? And then if anything, we just want to make sure there's the capacity for that income to actually come into your business. Tinley says, shitting glitter, lol. I love the idea of being committed to basic bitch life and keeping things predictable and sustainable. Sometimes the things that come out of my mouth are ridiculous, but I'm glad that made you laugh and I didn't lose everyone off this live stream from that. But you know what I'm talking about. I do think I love our online space, but I think sometimes there's just the funniest things that are taught where it's like, but that's just like, I have a very good mindset around money and business, but there's just certain things where it's like, but this is just called running a business. This is just called how you make money in business. And I think it's just sometimes helpful to normalize that. Yes, and again, I'll use examples outside of my business. I love that there's predictability and stability and, in air quotes, boringness in my marriage. And it's so exciting and it's so fulfilling because of that, right? Boring doesn't have to mean you don't enjoy it, you aren't fulfilled, you aren't lit up by it, you aren't crying happy tears on client calls, right? It just means that you're not addicted to the drama of the highs and lows. All that means in my marriage is it's very stable, right? We're just not addicted to those highs and lows, and we don't have to create that drama. The same way what I see for so many clients when they first start working with me is there's such an addiction to that drama in their business, right? Where it's almost like the highs of booking the clients and then the lows of not knowing where the money's coming from, and the highs, the lows. And what we're just looking at is like, how can we just bring this into a bit of a more neutral foundation and get all that excitement and joy from the actual context of your business or from the money that's coming in. That's always very exciting. Okay, two more here. I promise I won't keep us too long. Keep the comments, thoughts, questions coming at me, and I will just check here. I'm using the Facebook Live app within the app, and the comments come in a little slowly. I also think, even though I'm using a really great camera, I think it's very fuzzy today. I feel like I'm forever, y'all, figuring out how to get our live quality to be a little bit better in this group, and one day this will be one of the basics I refine, and we'll get that right. But two more shifts here that I see really allow clients to double their income or more. So this one is more of a mindset identity shift. This is such a big one, and I don't think we talk about this enough in the online space either. I think there's so much mindset around like, and I agree with this, like be it before you have it, and like if you want to make the 50K month or the $1 million year, like be that millionaire, like think like that millionaire, and all of that is so true. But I think we don't talk enough about the importance of normalizing and integrating the success you've created. And what I see for a lot of my clients, and what I'm supporting so many clients with, when they start to have those bigger income months consistently and they're wanting to make more, a lot of times our work isn't about like, how do we quickly jump to the next income level? It's how do we normalize what you've created as not being a fluke, as being something that is just so normal. And again, going back to that boring, like it's almost so boring, like it's so normal and it's boring. And how do we integrate this as your new normal? Again, so you have that stable foundation to allow more to come in. What I find happen otherwise for clients, or what I find when I've had people come to me who are kind of at this place, is they feel so like their nervous system feels so deregulated, where it's like they've got this influx of money, right? It's the addiction to drama, it's the highs and lows, and it feels like such a heightened experience, but it doesn't feel tethered and grounded. It doesn't feel normal. It feels like it could all go away tomorrow. They don't know how to replicate it, but it can also start to because it's not integrated, it feels like, oh my gosh, this is a fluke. What if everybody finds out I'm a fake? Like, I don't know how to replicate. Like, what if this never happens again? I'm never going to make more money, right? And that is it just feels very unsafe then. And if you're feeling very unsafe, it's not to create a story that you can't make more money. Of course you can, right? Lots of people create money from fear and from scarcity and from all of these places, but it starts to create a very rocky foundation. And I think this makes it very hard to double your income or more long term, right? You might have a peak of an income month, but this is where we almost see that like drama happening with income, where it's like there's that peak, but then it like plummets because it feels not safe to hold on to. And this is almost a whole nother live stream to talk about like the, I don't love the term money mindset, but the mindset around money and just like the relationship with money and holding money and having money and just all of that. But I think there could just be so much that comes up for people as they start to make 5 figures and multi 5 figures and start to grow into that I think so much of the work, again, it's just not as sexy to talk about, right? It's so much sexier if I'm just like, and then we focus on their millionaire mindset and we make $1 million tomorrow, as opposed to I'm like, well, one of the things we have to do is learn how to integrate and to stabilize making a 10K month so that feels really solid and something they can repeat. And of course, the next month could be a 100K month. We're here for that. But if that's the case, we don't want that to feel like a fluke and to feel so deregulated and stressful that then they burn their business down the next month, right? Or that they like run and hide and need to like go on a 6-month retreat. And y'all, I'm not even saying this sarcastically, we see this in our online space all the time. We see people make $1 million quickly and then you never hear from them again. Or they suddenly are in a completely different industry. There's someone when I started in this space whose work I really respected and who I thought was really, really great at what they did, who had, I think, pretty quick success, and they're not in the industry anymore. And I think I don't know this person's personal story, but I imagine part of what happened is it was never regulated in their system. It was never normalized. There was never that safety created around it, right? And then what do we do when we don't feel safe, right? Our fear response is fight, flight, freeze, bond, right? Fight, mess up your business, flight, run away, retreat, right? We can just see it like freeze. I can't do anything anymore. I'm paralyzed, right? This then starts to happen in business. So this isn't to say you can't have a quantum leap, even though I'm really hating that term right now, y'all. I'm like, I believe in quantum leaping, but I was talking about this with my mastermind sisters yesterday as well. This is like a whole side tangent. I'm like, the whole quantum leap noise is making my brain explode a little bit in the online space. Well, I'll probably have a rant around that at another point. Anyway, I will park that. I'm here for the quantum leap. I'm not here for the way that is making people feel really wrong and that it is putting crazy funny stories in people's brains. Dylan says, I used to always tell myself that every client I got was a fluke. Thank goodness for you and this reminder. Haha, I love you. And I think it's exactly that, right? It's like as soon as we think it's a fluke, we don't feel safe. It doesn't feel like we can repeat it, right? We're like, it just feels so unstable. Kate says safety is huge. It is so huge. I would say, I mean, I know you know this, Kate, because of your work, but I think the safety and the regulation piece, it is wild how important that is for, if we're talking about doubling income, making income of any kind, having sustainability in business, it is such a huge part of it. And I think everyone in this space wants to hear that, but we don't always want to hear that, right? Because our brain is just like, but what's the shiny thing to like make me more in 5 seconds? It's like, this is the shiny thing, y'all. Like creating safety, integration, normalizing, taking out the drama, all the things we're talking about. I'm on client calls all day long with clients at every stage of business. I'm like, this is like peek behind the curtain. Like, this is the stuff we're talking about. It's not like then when they get on a call with me, I'm like, so there's this secret way to quantum leap where you get that glitter that someone else, like being horrible, but like, and now you're going to spin around 5 times and chant your mantras to be a millionaire. And then next month you're going to quantum leap. Like, no, this is the stuff we're talking about. We're talking about how can you integrate this? How can you feel safe around this? Where's the guilt around making more money? How do we unpack that? How do we see this isn't a fluke? How do we normalize this? How do we put a system and a process around this? Like, this is the actual work. And this is what actually allows clients to double their income or more. Jordan says, I love to hear you quantum leap rant. Kate says, I'm with you on the quantum leap. So you might just hear a quantum leap, or we might have a impromptu live stream. I'm all for, I also, like, to be fair, when I'm ranting, y'all, I think you all know this, but I believe in quantum leaps. I've seen quantum leaps in clients. I've seen clients go from 10K months to $1 million in a year, right? I've seen quantum leaps. I've experienced quantum leaps. I'm here for the quantum leap. I just think there's so much in our space right now that is just, I don't think it's intentional. I just think it's very unintentionally harmful, and it's putting a lot of noise and pressure and stories in people's brains that just isn't what a quantum leap is and doesn't make sense for business or money. And it's just a term I'm not loving right now. I'm not loving quantum leap, and I'm not loving activating your wealth right now. These are two where I'm just like, I've got my beef with them, even though I'm a vegetarian. Okay, last one here, because otherwise I will go off on a huge rant. And Jordan says, agreed, slow and steady isn't as sexy. 1,000%. And it leads to the sexy results, right? The slow and steady, like talking about quantum leap, slow and steady can create the quantum leap, which is so interesting, right? The mindset of I'm here for the slow and steady. One of my clients did go 10K months to $1 million in a year. She would have told you it was slow and steady, right? It was slow and steady up until those 10 months for like 6 years. And then that quick quantum leap was also slow and steady. It's just the compound effect caught up for her, and she really allowed for that. And she did a lot of the mindset work. So slow and steady does lead to sexy results. It just doesn't sound so sexy in marketing, right? And so I think, Jordan, you're totally spot on. Okay, so we will chat about, Julie says, hi, I'm looking forward to catching the replay. Hi, nice to see you. Hi, Noshaba, how are you? I'm on Facebook and Instagram. You have to tell me how this is working. I'm doing a little experiment here and trying to do both. So I'm commenting back and forth. I love you. Hi. You're catching the tail end of this, but you just missed my rant on quantum leaps. How do you look this good without a filter? No. Instagram has a filter. If you look at me on Facebook, there's no filter. You can see what I look like without filter. Instagram, I always use their little light filter. Always. I'm vain. Facebook, y'all, just so you know, I am here for transparency. I am here to be as transparent as possible, but I'm also vain as fuck, and I like a filter on Instagram because they give them to us. I'm also 41 tomorrow, so like give me the help I can get. So, all right, now that we've talked more about filters than you need to know, but I mean, hey, we're here for that. Let's talk about the last one here. So far we've talked about, just to give a recap because there's people jumping on a little late, the first one really was looking at how to create that capacity, looking at where are you filling yourself to the brim, creating that spaciousness to allow more income to come through. The next one there was looking at where are you still trying to do everything yourself, where are you stuck in your zone of excellence, how can you really shift all of your attention to your zone of genius and outsourcing, deleting, saying no to, delegating, automating. Yes, your zone of competence, but that zone of excellence that really robs you from your zone of genius time. Looking at those boundaries. 3, really looking at where things are feeling so confusing and like almost mystical, where the money came through, and starting to get really clear about what is the process, what creates results in your business, what is bringing in income, how can you put a process around that, how can you put non-negotiables around it, how can you let your basics be so boring to create that solid foundation for the exciting results. Then we just talked about the mindset and identity piece, where it's like noticing where that money feels like a fluke, where it feels like I just got like lucky and money came through, or like I don't feel like I could repeat this, and really practicing the integration and the normalization. Oh, this was the other piece I wanted to speak to this with the integration part. Really what I coach clients around here, and what I think is so important, if you're looking at, I want to double my income, I want to have more income coming through the door, and we're looking at, okay, so you're making 10 to 20K a month, you want to make 40 to 50K months, right? And we're looking at how do we integrate, how do we stabilize, how do we regulate your nervous system around those 10 to 20K months. What I really like to play with, and this is something I do as well, like this is my mindset at work as well, is how can we really do the work to make this feel so normal? Because I think when it feels really deregulated, it feels like, not only does it feel like a fluke, but so often it feels like such a big deal, right? It feels like so, I mean, and this, I'm all for the celebration, y'all know that, but it can almost feel like such a big deal and like so crazy wild you're making this money that is actually, right, that's giving you that high. So then anything else also brings you to that low, as opposed to how can we do the work to absolutely celebrate and be grateful, and like a celebration whore over here, right? How can we be that person, and how can we start to normalize this where it's almost like boring in that way that's like, yeah, I just expect to make 10 to 20K months, or if you're making more, right? I just expect this, like this is just so normal. It's not that I'm not grateful, it's not that I don't celebrate, right? I celebrate every dollar in my business, I celebrate every client in my business, but for me, like making $30,000 to $40,000 a month, I'm so grateful, but that is just normal, right? That is what I expect, that is my new normal. That's what integration is. When that's integrated, then it's so much easier to allow more to come in through the door. Hey Afka, nice to see you. I don't know if you're still on, but I just saw your name pop up. Kate says happy birthday, Eve, Tim. Thank you. And Sarah says LOL. Oh, ha, ha, ha. And Georgia says happy birthday, Eve. Thank you all. Julie says happy early birthday. I love you all. Thank you. Thank you for the happy early birthday wish. Kate, it's almost your birthday. Jordan, it's almost your birthday too. Sarah, I feel like you're a December baby also. Are you? Am I making that up? I feel like we have a lot of December babies on the live right now. I'm end of November, but thank you all. I appreciate that. The last one I wanted to speak to here, and the last shift I really see for clients as they're doubling their income or more, is really leaning into going in to their business and looking at all the things they could solve and all the problems they could solve, and being in this pattern of, I am going in looking for problems and I need to solve a problem, and really learning instead how to solve the right problem and notice how many things might be in air quotes a problem, but not actually a problem for them to give their attention to. And I think this is a huge shift that is, I think it's important at every level in business, but I think this is a big shift I see in those clients, and to just see from the 10 to 20K months to the as they're doubling that. And I think, again, this kind of goes back to everything we've been talking about here. I think this is a muscle to work, because I talk about this all the time. The brain is wired to find problems. The online space is selling you problems that you have in your business all day long. It takes a certain level of trust in your business. It takes a certain level of mindset work. It takes a certain identity. It takes a certain trust in the income you're making. It takes a certain trust in the process and system and the non-negotiables we just talked about, right? If you don't have that solid, it's hard to trust that in the first place. I think it often takes a certain trust in the support you're getting. Many of my clients work with me for years and years and years. So it's easier for them to trust me if I also am saying this isn't a problem for us to solve, versus if you're constantly jumping around from program to program or coach to coach, even if they're incredible coaches, right? Every new program, every new coach, every new container, you're having to reteach them your business, your work, what is a problem, what isn't a problem. And I know if you're a client of mine, you know this. All of our brains are so good at convincing ourselves and others that something really is a problem. And it usually takes someone a second to discern what actually is something and what is just your pattern and noise and way of trying to create muck and self-sabotage. So I would say for these clients, one of I think the gifts they've given themselves is just continuing to invest in the same support and continuing to not outsource their power, essentially, which sounds, I think, a little hokey, but really and truly, and really, this is a form of self-trust, learning to trust themselves, learning to trust their business, learning to trust their strategy, learning to trust their processes, learning to trust their team, which is a whole, almost another conversation, but, right, learning the trust at every level so that they really can have that discernment around, is this a problem that needs my attention, or is this a distraction that looks like a problem, but that is self-sabotage or just something that I don't need to focus on, that is actually going to pull me away from the very few things that are going to help me increase my capacity, right? The first thing we're talking about, increase my spaciousness and allow more revenue to come through. Let's just see here. And Tilly says, oh my gosh, same, yay, same. Day, oh gosh, Tilly, you're a December baby too, right? December, how many we've got? It's everyone here. Woohoo, December baby. We've got all December babies. That's so crazy. Jordan says, I've come up with a really great response to people who message me about problems. About your problems. Feel free to share that if you want. I get, and just to normalize for everyone, I get messages about the problems in my business all the time. There are absolutely things that are, I don't want to call it a problem. There are things we could improve in my business. And we were talking earlier about refining basics and doing basic better. And there are certain things we are absolutely, they're not a problem, but we're absolutely refining as we have time because it makes sense to. And I'm 6.5 years in my business, and I've known many of those things were in air quotes problems for a very long time. I'm looking at them now because this is when we have little pockets of time. And I get messages all the time about how I could improve this and how this would improve my business. But here's the difference for me. And what I know is actually, I'm at capacity, right? That first thing we were talking about, right? I'm at capacity in my business. yes, December, there's some clients on vacation. We have an intensive spot or whatever. But in general, like we're just relatively at capacity. And I know part of my job is to continue to make sure there's enough capacity and spaciousness for me if I want to double my income, or if I want to keep growing and I want to keep growing my revenue. I know that actually going and spending a bunch of my time and energy to fix things in my business that I guess are problems but aren't creating a problem, all that would do, if anything, is create a bigger problem. Like it, like I don't have anywhere to, like, if that would actually bring me more clients, I don't have anywhere to put them. But it would more importantly take my time and energy away from serving the people in front of me. And so I don't know if that's the best example, but I'll use my website as an example. I love my website. We have not touched it in about 6 years. The copy needs an update. If I were editing my own copy the way I do for my clients, I'd give myself tons of notes, right? Like there's a ton there that could be updated. I think I shared this in one of our recent live streams. And we're like this time, like this is the time in my business where I'm now over the next 6 months going to put a little time and effort into that because we have some capacity for that. So I reflect that here because it's just so easy to have someone message you, or to hear someone, right? We're inundated with messages, to hear someone tell you you need better website copy, or you need a better money mindset and you have a money mindset problem. And that's why you're not making more money. Whatever, like insert problem where you may, like, this may or may not be a problem to address. This may or may not be the thing that's affecting your business, but thinking it's a problem and putting attention there could turn it into a big problem that creates a problem in your business. And so what I would say is one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself at any stage of business, but I would say especially as you're going from like the 10 to 20K mark and wanting to scale, is really starting to have discernment with like, what are the few things that actually require my attention, and really learning how to solve the right problem. As my coach Lacey Seitz says, just shout her out, learning how to solve the right problem in your business, as opposed to just running around like with a fire hose thinking everything is a problem, because that doesn't do anything in business. I'm just seeing here, no comments there. Wait, why can't I, Jordan, I can see you put a, oh, there it is. Okay. Jordan says, yay, December babies. Basically, I tell them, thank you, I'm a multi-6-figure business and it must be really hard to cope DM people. If you'd like to talk about your strategy to book clients and make revenue, here's my free call link. I actually had a free call from that this week. I love that so much. I love that. Gosh, Jordan, we can close on this because otherwise I'm going to like rant for the next 45 minutes and won't go to my spin class. But that is actually such a great example of how whatever they're reaching out about, like let's just say maybe that is something that actually could be, in air quotes, fixing your business. But look at how not an actual problem that is, that it turned into a lead for you. I just want everyone to hear that on this live stream. It is just such good evidence of what we're talking about, and such good evidence of, listen to what Jordan is saying. She's a multi-6-figure business owner, right? That's the money she's making. And listen to the trust she has in her business and in everything we've been talking about here, right? Like in what works for her and what are the right problems to solve and what actually generates revenue in her business, that this is the response she can have to someone. Like I think that's just such great evidence of all the things we're talking about here. So Jordan, I love that. I think it's funny, but I also love that response. So that's the last piece there to really play with, that I really invite you to play with as you're looking at doubling revenue. You know, whatever stage of business you're in. This is not about like this is a whole other live stream as well, but there is not a right income to make. There is not a right income goal. You are not a better business owner or a better coach or a better OBM or a better graphic designer or a better anything as you make more money. It just means your business is bringing in more revenue. For some businesses that makes sense. For other businesses, it doesn't make sense. If you make more revenue, that doesn't necessarily mean you take home more money. So please, as we recap this, like this is not now like everyone needs to now go double their revenue, and like your goal should be to do that next year. Or if you're not making that much, like there's a problem. These are all things, because I've seen that in my clients who have doubled their revenue or more this year. These are just some of the things I've really noticed, which is why I framed it that way. But please, for the love of all things good, don't take that from this live stream. Instead, I would want everyone to hear there is, I think, a little bit of a difference between the building, growing, and scaling phase in business. And I do think there is a little bit of what got you here won't always get you to where you want to go next. And there are certain things, as we're growing and building a business to the first 6 figures, right, there are going to be different things that make sense for you to do, that as you're then going from that stage, if you do want to double your income, if you do want to make more, that just are no longer going to make sense if you're wanting to bring more income in. That's really all this context is. And so also just what I would say is this is almost like an additional part, but it is a little bit of like the integration and the solving the right problem piece here. So much of what I see with these clients as well is just learning how to get better and better at staying in their own lane and keeping their eyes focused on their own paper and not making more money mean anything about them or their business or their worth, but also just knowing that their business is their business, their path is their path. And just because our online space can be so freaking noisy, right? Like just learning how to put those blinders on. And so for everyone here, I would say whatever stage you're at, whatever your income goals are, that's the piece that's always going to serve you. And then just being really, think about the mall maps. Remember the mall maps back in the day? And there's like a big X, like you are here. Then you figure out where you want to go to Sephora, if you want to go get like your pretzel or whatever. What was the pretzel place called? Auntie Anne's? Is it the pretzel place? By Jordan, love you. Right, whatever that place is called. The Where Are You Now spot. I think get your eyes on your own paper and just also check in with where are you now, so that you're, again, this goes back to the fifth part, which is solving the right problem in your business. So you're addressing and solving the right things in your business, because that is something that serves you at every stage, whatever income, whether you're working to book that first client and make that first $1,000 or that first 10K or that first 100K month. Getting your eyes on your own paper, knowing where you're at, and knowing the next right step for you and your business is what is always going to serve you. So I hope that was valuable for everyone. Tinley says, yes, Auntie Anne's loved soft pretzels. The cinnamon one is my favorite, though. I think I only ever see those now at the airport. I love you all so much. Thank you for hanging. Remember, if you leave a comment, if you leave an emoji, you'll be entered to win a free 100K CEO mindset and strategy session. We'll pick winners at the end of the week. We also, I think, have a giveaway post that we're putting out tomorrow, so you can keep an eye out for that. So there's more than one chance to win, because that's my favorite thing to do when I can. And if this is something you want support with, if you are at any stage of business, I help clients who are building their businesses and who are looking to double their income and grow and scale their businesses. So whether you're looking to create that solid, boring process and foundation that allows you to get fully booked and make that first 10K in business, or if you're at that place where you're making those, say, consistent 10K or 20K months, and you're like, I am doing this, but like I feel a little bit like it's a fluke, or I feel a little bit like my back end is a hot mess, or I feel a little bit like I don't know if this is ever going to happen again, and everyone's going to find out that I'm a fraud and an imposter, and like, like, how do I bring on a team, and what do I sell next, and like, how am I actually going to sustain this or make more? Or I feel like I'm working around the clock, and the only way for me to continue to do this is to like grind it out. You are not alone. I hear this from people all day, every day. I feel like sometimes I say things and I feel like my clients are going to think I'm singling them out, but this is the stuff I hear from all of my clients all the time. That is exactly what I support people with. I would love to connect with you. We do have some intensives that will be available in December, and I think those are an excellent place to start working together. They're a great place to dive in and look at the basics, the boring bitch stuff in the business, to allow that to be a solid foundation, as well as the mindset side of things. So you really are able to normalize, to integrate success, and use that as a solid foundation to springboard off of, to quantum leap off of, to make that multi-six and seven figures. I'll drop a discovery call link for anyone who's interested in that, or one of my upcoming one-on-one spots. And then y'all, I love you so, so much. Tinley says, I really did think that you were calling me out. I love you for everything you do. I swear so much I was not calling you out. I swear. It really and truly, like sometimes I'll have like 3 people be like, was that last podcast about me? And I'm like, I know it really wasn't. It was about you and everyone else, which I think is so nice for everyone to know, like just to normalize, like these things are so universal. Tinley says, thank you so much. Kate says, very valuable. Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right, I love you all so, so much. I will be here next week on Tuesday, and we'll chat more fun things. I think we're talking sales next week, so we'll talk about sales stuff. Bye, y'all.